When my granddaughter Lily first used that word, servant, it wasn't shouted. It wasn't an insult spat out in anger. It was delivered with the casual, careless certainty of someone stating an obvious fact, like saying the sky is blue. I was kneeling on the floor, picking up the small shards of a porcelain teacup Lily had just dropped. She looked down at me from her towering teenage height and sighed. Grandma, just leave it. The servants will clean it later. You shouldn't be on your knees. I looked up at her, and the smile I gave her was genuine, if a little shaky. But in that small, echoing silence, the seed of humiliation was planted. They thought I was an afterthought, a kindly but irrelevant fixture in their grand, modern life. I am Margaret, and to understand why that word hurt, you have to understand my history with the Magnolia Grill. That restaurant wasn't just a business, it was the love story of my life. My husband, Thomas, and I built it 30 years ago from a dilapidated storefront. He was the brilliant chef, and I was the relentless engine behind the scenes, the planner, the accountant, the chief cleaner, and the heart. We poured every penny, every late night, every dream into that place. We raised our two children, David and Sarah, in the kitchen. They did their homework in the small office upstairs, the scent of fresh bread and simmering sauces forever in the air. When Thomas passed away unexpectedly 5 years ago, it nearly broke me. But the Magnolia Grill was our legacy, and I kept it running, sharp, and profitable. My son David and his wife, Victoria, had grander plans for me. They had moved into a beautiful, expensive suburban home, and they insisted I sell my house and come live with them. Mother, David had argued gently, you need to rest, you've earned it. Let the managers handle the restaurant, enjoy your retirement. The pressure was immense. David was a successful lawyer, and Victoria was a social climber. They saw my constant trips to the Magnolia Grill as an embarrassment, a sign that I couldn't let go. They wanted me to be the perfect, silent grandmother in the corner, available for babysitting, but invisible otherwise. They wanted me to fit the image of their successful corporate life. I eventually conceded, selling my house and moving into their guest wing. I kept my majority ownership of the restaurant, of course, but I stepped back from the daily management, leaving it to my brilliant, loyal general manager, Mr. Chen. I still went to the restaurant often, every Tuesday and Friday morning. I told David and Victoria I was going to visit my old friends and have coffee. The truth was, I went to check the books, review the service flow, and quietly, discreetly work. I would arrive early, before the rush, often wearing simple, comfortable clothes, a worn cardigan, practical shoes. I would help the morning crew set up the tables, polish the silverware, and sometimes even clear the early breakfast dishes. It was a way to keep my hands busy and my heart connected to the place where Thomas still felt present. My family, however, interpreted these visits differently. They saw the simple clothes, the quiet tasks, and the constant presence at the back door. They assumed I was merely a lingering, emotional presence, a harmless old woman bothering the staff. Honestly, Mother, Victoria would say with a brittle smile, why do you always wear those old things? And you shouldn't be cleaning tables. You look like one of the staff. It's a bit undignified for the owner's mother. They had forgotten, or perhaps never fully understood, that I was the owner. My son ran his law practice, and Victoria managed her social calendar. I managed the quiet, powerful stream of profit from the Magnolia Grill, the profit that largely paid for their grand house and their expensive lifestyle. The conflict wasn't financial, it was existential. They were trying to erase the part of me that was strong, capable, and connected to the real world of work and creation. They wanted Margaret, the retired grandmother, not Margaret, the formidable businesswoman. The incident with Lily was the start of the rising conflict. Then came the discussions about my time. Mother, why are you always sneaking out to the city? We need you here to supervise the movers. Or, don't you think it's time to sell the restaurant, Margaret? It's just an old building. David and I could use the capital for that new wing. They saw the Magnolia Grill as a potential cash machine, not the legacy that sustained me. The final straw came during one of my quiet Friday visits. I was in my usual worn sweater, helping a new busboy restock the sugar packets near the front. David and Victoria unexpectedly brought a group of important clients in for a power lunch. They marched past me without a nod, David making a subtle, dismissive gesture with his hand as if shooing a fly. As they settled at the best table, I heard Victoria lean in and whisper loudly, "Don't mind her. She's just one of the old staff members who refuses to retire. Bless her heart, she thinks she's still useful. We let her potter around to keep her happy." I stood there, holding a box of sugar, listening to my own daughter-in-law describe me to strangers as a pitiful, slightly senile burden. The betrayal was sharp, cold, and entirely public. I walked straight to the back office, sat down, and called Mr. Chen. The time for quiet observation was over. It was time for the dignified, precise, and necessary truth to be revealed. The phrase Victoria used, "She thinks she's still useful," replayed in my mind like a broken record. It wasn't the insult itself, but the lack of malice behind it. She truly believed it. In their eyes, my value was purely sentimental, not substantive. David, my son, had barely glanced at me that day, utterly consumed by his clients and his corporate performance. He had chosen their perception of success over my existence. That's when the quiet work began. I knew my response had to be as profound as their misunderstanding. My initial reaction wasn't anger, it was clarity. I realized that my family's blindness was rooted in the very success I had created for them. They saw the lifestyle, the large house, the private schools, the designer clothes, but they never saw the machine that generated it. They had willfully ignored the engine room, and now they were surprised when the engineer looked like someone who worked hard. I increased my secret visits to the Magnolia Grill. I no longer went to just potter. I went to analyze. Mr. Chen, my general manager, was the only one who knew the full extent of my involvement. He had been Thomas's protege and was fiercely loyal to the restaurant's original vision. He knew I was the one who signed off on the major decisions, the large contracts, and the capital improvements. When I told him about the incident with David and Victoria, he was furious, but I calmed him. "No drama, Mr. Chen, just data. We need to remind them that running a successful restaurant isn't about wearing a clean suit, it's about execution and control." My main focus became the restaurant's upcoming major renovation project. It was a massive investment, a total overhaul of the kitchen and the dining area, costing millions. David and Victoria were vaguely aware of the project, but they assumed the bank was funding it through some complex business loan. They didn't know that the Magnolia Grill was self-funding the entire project from retained profits. Profits accumulated thanks to the careful, quiet management I had overseen for years. The final contracts for the renovation were due to be signed next month, a pivotal moment. I started spending my evenings not knitting, but reviewing architectural blueprints and complex financing schedules in the quiet of my guest wing. Victoria would often pass my room, see me under the soft lamplight with reading glasses perched on my nose, and assume I was reading a gentle novel. "Oh, Mother is having a quiet night," she would tell David, relieved. They had no idea I was analyzing cost variances in structural steel or negotiating payment terms with a construction firm. The casual humiliations continued. Victoria was planning a large charity dinner party at their house and asked me to help. "Mother," she instructed one afternoon, handing me a list, "you are so good at these little tasks. Can you please handle the seating arrangement and place settings, and make sure the silver is perfectly polished? You know how to make things sparkle, just like you do at the restaurant." The implication was clear. I was good for manual, subservient tasks, but not for anything requiring intellectual input. I simply smiled and took the list. "Of course, dear, I understand the importance of perfect placement." I used that list as my own planning tool. As I polished the silver, I was mentally reviewing the restaurant's inventory of antique flatware, comparing it to the new cutlery order. As I planned their seating, I was arranging the final meeting with the investors and the construction foreman. I was preparing for a far more important event than Victoria's charity dinner. I decided that the revelation would happen not in a courtroom, but in the heart of my empire, the Magnolia Grill. I needed the perfect trigger, and Victoria provided it unwittingly. She called me one Tuesday morning, sounding flustered. "Mother, David is bringing his new senior partner, Mr. Henderson, to lunch at the Magnolia Grill this Friday. It's a critical meeting. Could you possibly stay home that day?" Mr. Henderson is very particular about appearances, and honestly, with all due respect, your presence and your little chores at the back tend to distract from the high-end feel we need to convey. We can't risk him seeing you looking like hired help. There it was, the explicit order to hide myself because I looked like a servant. It was the perfect betrayal, the ultimate underestimation. "Oh, Victoria dear," I replied, my voice sweet and understanding. "You are absolutely right. Appearances are everything. I will ensure everything is perfectly aligned for David's important meeting on Friday. I immediately called Mr. Chen. Mr. Chen, I said, I need you to schedule the final contract signing for the renovation for this Friday. And I want the meeting held in the main private dining room, precisely at 1:00 p.m. I also need you to ensure that the entire renovation team, the lead investors, and the bank representatives are present. And Mr. Chen, please arrange for David and his party to be seated at the table right next to the private dining room's entrance. I want them to have an excellent view of my meeting. Finally, I need one thing from you that morning. When you see me, please do not address me as Margaret. Address me only as the owner. My calm was absolute. The stage was set. They thought they were hiding me from their world. They were about to find out they were guests in mine. Friday arrived, clear and crisp, the perfect day for a reckoning. I woke early, but instead of putting on the simple cardigan they expected, I chose my outfit with meticulous care. It wasn't a corporate suit, which would have been too obvious, too aggressive. It was a beautiful, deep emerald dress, tailored and understated, a dress Thomas had loved. I added the small, elegant pearl necklace he had given me for our 25th anniversary. I looked like myself, a woman of substance and quiet authority. I arrived at the Magnolia Grill just before 12:30 p.m. I went straight to the kitchen, but this time I didn't clear dishes. I simply greeted the staff, checked the special preparations for the day, and then went to the small back office to collect the thick binder containing the renovation contracts. I felt a beautiful blend of calm and quiet strength. This wasn't about vengeance. It was about reclaiming the respect that had been systematically stripped away. The restaurant was already buzzing when David's party arrived. I watched discreetly from the kitchen pass-through as David, Victoria, and his crucial senior partner, Mr. Henderson, were seated at the prime table I had requested, a plush booth right next to the entrance of the main private dining room. Victoria was radiant, dressed impeccably, managing the conversation with practiced ease. David was nervous, overly attentive to Mr. Henderson, his entire future resting on this lunch. I walked slowly out of the kitchen area, past the bustling staff, holding my thick binder. I needed to cross the main floor to get to the private dining room. As I approached their table, Victoria spotted me. Her eyes narrowed instantly, seeing the emerald dress, which was clearly not hired help attire, but still not the silent, invisible grandmother they had demanded. She quickly leaned towards David and whispered, but her whisper carried across the quiet hum of the room. "Oh my God. Mother, what are you doing? I told you to stay home. David, look, she's going to ruin this with her drama." David looked up, his face hardening with a blend of annoyance and embarrassment. He leaned across the table toward me, his voice low and sharp, betraying his stress. "Mom, please go back to the office. We have important business. We cannot have you distracting us. You know how important this meeting is. If you want to help, go clean up something in the back." The words, "go clean up something," hung in the air, a final, public humiliation in front of the man who held his career in his hands. Victoria offered Mr. Henderson a strained, apologetic smile. I stopped right beside their table. I looked directly at David, not with anger but with deep sorrow. "I understand the importance of your meeting, David," I said, my voice steady and clear, yet calm. "And I certainly understand the value of a clean environment." Just as the tension became unbearable, and David was about to stand up and physically escort me away, the door of the private dining room swung open. Mr. Chen, my general manager, walked out. He was dressed in his immaculate suit, looking professional and urgent. He spotted me instantly and strode purposefully towards me. He did not glance at David or Victoria, focusing only on me. "Mrs. Margaret," he announced clearly, addressing me with professional formality, "I apologize for the delay, but the renovation team and the bank representatives are all assembled. They are ready to sign the final contract for the $3 million kitchen overhaul now. They are only waiting for your final approval." He paused, then bowed slightly, adding the crucial phrase with respect that cut through the room like a bell. "The owner is ready now. Should I bring the documents to your table, ma'am?" The entire restaurant seemed to freeze. Mr. Henderson, David's senior partner, choked on his water. He immediately swiveled his head, focusing on me with new, acute interest. David's face went white. Victoria's perfect smile dissolved, replaced by a look of stunned disbelief and dawning horror. They had just heard their mother, the woman they had dismissed as a servant who should go clean up something, addressed as the undisputed owner of the entire establishment. the one signing the multi-million-dollar checks. I handed the heavy binder to Mr. Chen. "No, Mr. Chen," I said, keeping my eyes fixed on David and Victoria, who were now paralyzed with shock. "The owner will conduct the meeting in the private room, as scheduled. Please tell the team I will be there in one moment." Then I finally looked at Mr. Henderson. I gave him a small, polite nod. "Mr. Henderson," I said softly, "please excuse me. I have some rather important contracts to sign. I trust you are enjoying the atmosphere here. It is a wonderful investment after all." I didn't wait for a response. I walked straight past them, pushed open the door to the private dining room, and closed it behind me. The noise of the busy restaurant vanished. I was in a room full of serious professionals, all standing to greet me, ready to work. But in my mind, the only thing that mattered was the stunned silence I had just left behind at that oak booth. I had not shouted, not argued, and not stooped to their level. I had simply stepped into my truth. The humiliation they tried to inflict had boomeranged back to them with quiet, shattering force. When I finally emerged from the private dining room an hour later, the Magnolia Grill felt different. It felt like the air had been scrubbed clean of assumptions. I didn't see David's party immediately, but as I walked toward the front, I saw Mr. Henderson, the senior partner, standing alone near the host's stand. He approached me with a profound respect that was completely new. "Mrs. Margaret," he said, shaking my hand warmly, "that was impressive. Your acumen for operational finance is truly remarkable. David speaks highly of his family, but he certainly undersold your role. It's an honor to finally meet the true mind behind this establishment." I smiled, thanked him, and reassured him that the meeting had been productive for David's firm. I had no intention of using my success to ruin my son's career. I only wanted to fix my relationship with him. I found David and Victoria waiting for me in the small staff break room, the last place anyone would look for the owner. They were sitting silently, their posture defeated, their immaculate clothing seeming suddenly too tight, too professional for the real world. The silence between us was immense. David looked up, his eyes red and brimming with unshed tears. He wasn't the lawyer anymore, he was my son. "Mom," he started, his voice thick with emotion, "I don't know what to say, I didn't know, I honestly thought you had just stayed on the board for sentimental reasons. I never looked at the ownership structure. I let Victoria tell me that your visits were an annoyance, that your clothes were an embarrassment. I believed her because it was easier than facing the truth. That I was ashamed of your work, because it wasn't my type of corporate success." Victoria didn't offer the usual clipped, professional apology. She was simply quiet. "We were arrogant, Margaret. We saw you polishing silver and assumed you couldn't possibly be signing multi-million-dollar contracts. We called you a servant because we wanted to believe we were superior. We needed to believe our life was the source of all the good things." I sat down across from them, taking a slow breath. I didn't need their shame, I needed their understanding. "The day I was sweeping up the sugar packets, Lily called me a servant," I told them softly. "And when you told me to go clean up something today, David, in front of your client, you confirmed that's how you saw me. But let me tell you something important about cleaning, David. When I sweep the floor, I am ensuring the foundation is solid. When I polish the silver, I am upholding the standard of excellence that keeps this restaurant profitable. And when I am in that kitchen in my worn cardigan, I am checking the heart of the business. I didn't keep the ownership a secret to surprise you. I kept it quiet because I wanted to see if you respected me just as Margaret, the mother, the grandmother, the woman in the worn sweater. I wanted to know if you valued my presence, not my portfolio. And the answer," I paused, the sadness returning, "was no." I reached into my handbag and pulled out a small, folded receipt, a record of a new debit card purchase. "The capital is not what matters. The respect is. You are both forgiven for your words, but you need to earn back my trust and my respect for yourselves. And you start by valuing honest work." Then came my final, quiet act of closure. The day you asked me to stop bothering the staff, I made a change. I had Mr. Chen officially adjust my weekly pay. The multi-million-dollar profit I take out, that's deposited automatically. But I set up a small, specific weekly wage, equivalent to what a part-time kitchen assistant earns. It's deposited into my new debit account. "Why?" I looked at them, letting the question hang in the air. "Because I intend to continue coming in every Tuesday and Friday morning, and I will be polishing, preparing, and helping. I will not be the invisible matriarch. I will be an active employee. I am not demanding your money, David. I am demanding the right to be useful and to be respected for the work I choose to do. I stood up. I don't need you to sell the house or give me back control. I need you to remember that the most priceless ingredient in any successful operation, whether a business or a family, is dignity. David stood up and, without prompting, hugged me tight. This time, it wasn't a nervous, corporate hug. It was the hug of a boy who had just woken up. "I'll never forget this, Mom," he whispered into my shoulder. "I promise." The Magnolia Grill continued to flourish. David and Victoria learned to see the staff and me differently. They started dropping by the restaurant, not for power lunches, but to quietly thank the busboys and hostesses. I continued my Tuesday and Friday visits, often slipping into my comfortable cardigan. The staff still treated me with subtle deference, but now David and Victoria treated me with genuine, earned respect. The small weekly wage I collected was a constant, tangible reminder that value is not tied to a title or a tailored suit, but to the willingness to contribute. That day, they called me a servant, but by the end of it, they realized that the woman they tried to dismiss was the true master of the house and the owner of their respect. The real moral, I suppose, is this: never underestimate the woman who knows how to use both a whisk and a pen. She is the quiet force that makes the world turn.